And I'm delighted to be talking to returning guest today, Mr. Christopher Dunn. And we've got a little special feature show today on the Serapeum of ancient Egypt, this ancient underground complex full of mystery. If you're not familiar with Chris's previous shows, you can catch them on the archives. But Chris is the author of two books, The Giza Power Plant and Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, which we've both discussed on the show. And Chris doesn't need much of an introduction to Capricorn Radio, so without further ado, hi Chris, welcome back to Capricorn Radio.
Hello James, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, as you know, Chris, we've had a little chat when I came back from the chematology tour, and I'm blown away by the Serapeum, Chris. I'm absolutely blown away by this place.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, we've waited many years for other people to start going in there and seeing what it contains. Because I've been like a lone voice out there for many years talking about it and discussing it. But it's great that other people are now getting to see it and also take their own measurements. When
was the first time you seen the Serapeum, Chris?
It was in 1995, but I can tell you what happened and how I came to have the tools that I had in 1995. And the Serapeum actually was quite a surprise for me. But I first went to Egypt. It was as I was writing the Giza Power Plant, I first went to Egypt in 1986. And I wasn't expecting to see the extraordinary precision that we are now noting crafted into the limestone and granite artifacts that we find now. And so I just went to take notes, observe, make observations, take notes, and confirm some of the concepts that I was working on in my book. But what I did note as I was walking around the Giza Plateau at that time was that the casing blocks for the pyramids seemed to be extraordinarily flat and they had very sharp corners. But of course, as you know, as an engineer and myself,
Chris.
something that looks to be precise may not necessarily be that precise.
To the eye, the eye can be deceiving, Chris, can't it?
Yes, they can. And so I never make a determination on any artifact, and I've had people send photographs to me over the years and ask my opinion whether it's machined and I can't really confirm one way or the other unless I take some measurements of it and do a thorough examination of the artifact. So I kind of decline to comment on many artifacts that are presented to me just by photographs. Though the amount of evidence that seems to be mounting, adding up now, it seems to be that if something looks precise, it appears that, when you actually go back with the instruments, you're going to find that it is indeed, if it's in Egypt, it is indeed crafted very precisely. Well, in 1986, I didn't have any tools to make that determination. And so I made a mental note when I came back to the States that the next time that I traveled to Egypt, I would take some tools with me and I would check the flatness and the surfaces to find out just exactly how precise they were. That opportunity didn't come to me again until 1995. And I was invited to participate in a documentary with Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock. And it was around February of 1995. So I packed my clothes in my suitcase and I took a parallel, a ground precise straight edge parallel, which was about 2/10,000ths of an inch of precision. And a square, a toolmaker's square. These are hardened steel tools, and the kind that you would use in a machine shop or a tool room, something like that. And so I took those with me, and also some forming wax, because I'd also noted that there were some objects that had a corner radius that also seemed to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my thought that I would take an impression with some forming wax and to see just exactly how consistent those radii were. And then in 1995, I got to Egypt. I met Graham and Robert, very nice people, and I was filmed in the King's Chamber the morning after I arrived at 9 a.m. And then after that, my bit was done, and so I heard that they were going out to Saqqara.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where the Serapeum is.
Where the Serapeum is, and I was with a gentleman from Canada named Robert McKenty. He was also doing research there, and so when they were filming in the Serapeum, I was not included in the filming, but I followed them in there. They had permission to go, and I tagged along as part of the group, which I appreciate that opportunity very much. Mm-hmm. But what I saw inside the Serapeum actually blew me away. On one of the crypts, I jumped down, or actually I didn't jump down. It's quite a jump, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's quite a jump.
there were steps down to the floor where these very large boxes are housed, and I put the precision straight edge against the surface, and I noted that it was extremely flat. Mm. Interestingly, the day before that, I went into the second pyramid, and I went inside the box in the chamber, subterranean chamber in the second pyramid, and I measured the inside of that box with the straight edge, and I got the same thing. It was incredibly flat. Yeah, it was just like
mirror finish, Chris.
Yeah, mirror finished, and it's like something familiar to me. It's like a surface plate inside a tool room. Mm-hmm. I mean, the feel was the same, and this precision that I've been familiar with for over 30 years. It was so familiar to me.
It's out of place in ancient times, Chris.
It is out of place in ancient times, and even that rudimentary inspection indicated to me that there was much more going on back then than what we realized. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that occurred to me was that there needs to be further examination. There needs to be a more thorough examination with more sophisticated instruments. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, trying to actually do that and accomplish that in Egypt for myself was almost impossible. But I wrote about that experience in 1995 in the Giza power plant.
That's right, yeah.
And in 1999, I was trying to get access to go back in there because I had crafted a straight edge. I had it crafted for me. I was working in engineering rather than on the floor, on the shop floor. Mm-hmm. And so I had a tool maker craft me a straight edge that was 12 inches long rather than 6 inches long. And I also had a 14-inch square rather than a 6-inch square when I went in 1995. But I couldn't get access. Every door was closed to me. The place was not open to the public.
It remained closed for a long time, Chris. It was closed for a long time.
It was closed for a long time, and it was considered dangerous. Well, I met a gentleman in the Malvern Peak bar one evening, and he was a local businessman. I was talking to him about it. He claimed that he would be able to talk to some people he knew in power, be able to get me access into the Serapeum. I was delighted to hear that. Unfortunately, it turns out he couldn't He couldn't. He said no. He said the place is closed to the public. No tourists are allowed there, and it's dangerous. I asked, well, what's the danger? And they said he claimed that there was water seeping through the ceiling, and it would dislodge a block. And of course, I questioned where the water came from, but I just held my tongue, and I said, well, okay, this time it's not for me. Hopefully another time.
And in the 80s and 90s, Chris, was that steel girder system all new? Is that new framework? Is that to hold the building up, to hold the tunnels up?
Yeah, that work was actually going on in 2006 when I went there in 2006. Mm-hmm. But they had not completed it. They just had the vaulted girders, that were seen in parts. Mm-hmm. They had installed the wooden floor. In 1995 and 2001, the floor was just the limestone, and it was, covered with sand, and a lot of dust was raised when you were walking through there. But mm-hmm. They put this wooden floor in, which makes it a lot better. Mm-hmm. But in the process of putting those girders in and shoring up the tunnels, they reduced the width of both the tunnels and the crypts. Mm-hmm. And so, one may look at that and think that it would be impossible to move those boxes around those corners, but the original dimensions were much larger and would allow for the boxes to be moved, swung around the corners.
Sure. What about the drop in level though, Chris? There is a massive drop in level when the rooms are off the corridor.
Yes, I know. And it's a very puzzling place. I mean, there are so many questions that are raised, and I don't know if we'll ever find answers to them all. But it does promote, certainly promotes a lot of speculation and wonder about what they were doing mm-hmm. and why they were doing it. For one thing, it's one thing to cut a crypt into the side of the tunnel wall, but then quite another to drop a 70-ton box down about, 3 or 4 feet mm-hmm. To another level, mm-hmm. and then insert it into another cavity within that floor, mm-hmm. so that they cut a rectangle on the inside of the crypt, and the box is inserted into that. And of course, that in itself raises a lot of questions, because you have to ask why would they see a need to insert the box into its own cavity when it's heavy enough just to sit on the floor.
This is all everything about this place, Chris. For me, yeah, I mean, it screams extreme engineering, from the boxes themselves to how they're placed, why they did it.
And really, everything leads towards. For me, everything leads towards vibration, where if you have any object on a surface and that surface is vibrating, that object is going to move. It's going to it's going to be moving around, mm-hmm. and if you insert it into a cavity, then that would contain it and hold it in position. That's the only reason that I could think of. Mm-hmm. And then when you consider the acoustics and the vibratory nature of that whole site, in terms of even the transfer of vibration from buses in the parking lot mm-hmm. can be heard in some parts of that complex, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. and very loudly too. So there is a lot. The whole site is riddled with tunnels and shafts, and it appears to me, and I'll make a speculation here, Everybody can speculate, but it seems to me that that whole area is like a huge sounding board, and it's free to resonate at a particular frequencies or, a selection of frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
But the Serapeum certainly is an amazing facility, and it's so great now that people are able to go in there, and you have other specialists who are also making comment about how precise and how incredible these artifacts are.
Of course,
it's something that has needed to be known by the general public for years.
For years, yeah. You must have been pulling your hair out, Chris, when you had discovered this place, seen this place with your level of knowledge, and you were a pioneer and lone voice, and it must have been torment for you, Chris.
It was exhilarating for me to actually find that and be able to go in there and do my measurements. I wasn't always forbidden. I was able to get into the Serapeum in 2001. I was invited to participate in a documentary with Grizzly Adams Production. It was a documentary for Pax Television in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And so the producer invited me to Egypt to be interviewed on site. And she was also interviewing Hakim Abdel Hawiyan.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite an experience. She also interviewed Zahi Hawass near the Sphinx. And then the following day we had to go to Hawass's office. Evidently there was an honorarium that he needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to meet him, and there's a photograph actually on my website. There's an article on my website called the Amazing Boxes of the Serapeum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on a link under the articles section. And it's the link is the precision of the ancient Egyptians, and listeners can go to my website and skeezerpower.com.
Mm-hmm.
And they can read that article and then see what the Serapeum looked like back in 2001 when I was there.
Beautiful. Of course, Chris, you wrote a book about high technology, advanced machining in ancient Egypt, and you've looked all around the world for this, Chris. Would you say that these Serapeum boxes are one of the best examples that we have of this?
They're the most powerful example that I've seen. They really are incredible. It's because they're on such a large scale. There are other examples of precision machining. When you look at the statues of Ramses, they are precise. But to actually be able to confirm even the concept that the ancient Egyptians worked to such a high level of precision, it's more difficult on a statue, but you can certainly point to the boxes in the Serapeum and say there is proof positive that the ancient Egyptians had a higher level of understanding of precision, and they were doing it for a purpose. Nobody works to such a high level of precision if there's not a good reason to do it, because the extra time and expense it's just not worth it. Chris, I mean, why do it?
If we were to do that today, Chris, if we were to take, maybe just talk us through that. If we were to take 100 tons of material of Aswan granite, ship it to where the Saqqara is, and then carve that, how difficult would be that for us to do today?
It would really stretch our capabilities. When I came back to the States, after, coming across this amazing facility, I called 3 granite companies that were in the business of crafting precise objects like surface plates, V-blocks, squares, and things of that nature, for laboratories and tool rooms and inspection departments. only one would actually discuss it with me, and I asked them for a quote on producing one of these boxes.
What was the grand sum?
Well, the guy who came back with a response said that they don't have the equipment to actually create one of these boxes. Mm-hmm. But what they would do is they would make it in 5 pieces and then ship it to the site and bolt it together. But the blocks, the granite itself, would cost probably about $200,000. And then the DOT, Department of Transportation fees for shipping these weights would be also extraordinary too.
Wow.
But they would ship them in 5 pieces for the box and then, one for the lid. So, but I couldn't get a quote on actually plowing it out of a solid piece of granite.
Wow. Wow.
And yes, and that is that would be an enormous amount of work. Of course it could be done. I mean, but how would you do it? You would probably have to engage in different levels of skill, mm-hmm. where you would have somebody who was used to actually roughing it out. They may, what kind of tools they would employ in roughing the insides out, and then you would have to engage people who are more familiar with working to a high level of precision. Mm-hmm. In manufacturing, you don't normally mix the two, because somebody who's used to working to high tolerances and high level of precision, they they wouldn't be efficient in doing it rough. They don't like to work in a sloppy way.
It's a different field.
And so they would take more time to rough it out. So you would give it to somebody who was used to just doing rough work.
No. It's a multi-stage process, Chris.
It'd be a multi-stage process. Now, when you look at the site, though, when you go onto the inside of these tunnels, you'll see that there is a rough box in one of the tunnels, and then just in the entrance hall, there is a lid off to the side. Both are rough, and both are left there. It's just sitting there. Why? Who knows? I mean, there are so many missions. Why was the unfinished obelisk just left in the quarry?
Exactly.
The reason they give is that it was left there because it developed a crack. Well, that's fine, but they went to so much work to carve out these troughs around this obelisk. If they couldn't use it as an obelisk, they could have certainly cut it up and use it for smaller elements. Yeah,
exactly. Chris, the Serapeum, there's 24 of these boxes. I think there's 28 cavities and 4 are missing. I think we have 24 of these boxes, Chris. If one of these boxes existed, Chris, that would be enough for me to feed the mystery of what's gone on and the engineering. But there's 24, Chris. There's 20. They did this 24 times, Chris.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? And each one
is amazing in its own right. Yeah.
I mean, you see some that are not so precise on the outside, but all of them, on the inside surfaces are smooth and square.
Mirror finish.
And very, very sharp inside corners, which is...
Very sharp, Chris. Very sharp.
Yeah. Very sharp corners. I'd say probably around 5/16 of an inch or less, which is, considering the size of the box, is very small.
Yeah.
And considering the size of a dolerite ball, which Egyptologists would tell us they banged it out with, that's a very small radius. To work something like that out is, would require a very small radius on a tool.
I've got some HD footage of this. I think Brian does as well, Brian Forster, and I am just blown away, and everybody that looks at this stuff, they're scratching their heads, Chris.
Well, yeah, I know, it's great. It's fantastic that we're having engineers go down there now and seeing this stuff.
The word is out now, Chris, as they say. The word is out. Chris, I had a 140 LED camera mounted, 140 LED light mounted on top of the camera. And when I was in one of the boxes, I flashed it, because there's a dimmer on it, and I flashed it up and down, and you can see that LED reflecting like a mirror off the surface. It's just like a mirror.
Oh, right. Exactly.
Mirror
Exactly.
finish.
It's a mirror surface, and to craft something that precise, that would be the result. I mean, if they were going for a very, very precise finish, then it will be polished, because they would be using a very fine grit to get that final finish.
Now, Yusuf pointed something out to me on the very last. There's two things. There's one box down at the very end of the hallway in the Serapeum. It's the one with the very crude writing on it, Chris.
Yeah.
Obviously you don't subscribe to the bull theory that these were sarcophagi for bull.
No.
I mean,
no,
I think this writing that that the evidence falls on is flimsy somewhat at best, and I think that this writing at the very end one is just so incredibly crude, Chris.
That's on the basalt box, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. When you look at a lot of these artifacts in Egypt, you can go south to Luxor and you'll find evidence of the Comitian craftsmanship, which are very, very deep and precise sunken reliefs. And then right next to them, you might find some scratches. And the question is, when you look at these scratches, such as what you would find on the bench that Ramses sits on at the Luxor Museum, or this this basalt box in the Serapeum, when you look at these scratches, are you interpreting them literally, or do you accept that they were applied later, adopted by a later civilization who didn't have the tools that would be necessary to create these artifacts?
I mean, Chris, it's actually shocking that somebody would even attribute the same hand to that, because they couldn't even draw a straight line with it. It looks like a nail was scratched into it.
That's right, and you see this all over the place. Even what they call the dream stele, which is between the paws of the Sphinx, they have the same condition there, where you have a really sharp, precise, and deeply cut sunken reliefs, and then you have these crude scratches. And, you have to be able to distinguish between one and the other. And then if you are, it depends on which part of the glyphs are being interpreted, by Egyptologists, and how they influence their interpretation of the site.
Yusuf Aouyam pointed out some sort of it looked like a liquid etch around the edge of are you familiar with that, Chris?
What's that one now?
It looks like there was a liquid sprayed on the edge, like maybe they used a liquid etch to help or mirror the flatten the surface.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, maybe that's a recent finding. It does actually look like there was a liquid, some sort of a chemical etching process going on. But that's maybe new from the recent chematology tour. Yeah. So the parallel thing, Chris, is what gets me. If you, and this is for the listeners, if you have a parallel box, whether it's any type of box, it'll have its own acoustic because it's perfectly parallel. Now, if it's parallel widthways and lengthways, it's going to have an acoustic effect. Now, Chris, I've been inside these boxes. There's even when I have the video footage, there's such a resonance on the video. You can actually hear it on the video, Chris.
Sure. Yeah. That would be natural. And even that would be a reason why they would craft them the way they did, to achieve that resonance.
Is that what you think the primary reason for this is, Chris?
I think it's for an effect. And what that effect is, it involved energy, and vibration and sound is energy. Light travels in waves, something that travels in waves, because these boxes are, I would bet, were resonator boxes, just by the fact that they're sitting in niches and these recesses in the floor. And they were subject to vibration, and there was an effect on something inside these boxes. What that was, I don't know. Maybe they were there. Maybe they were inserted to tune the complex, the whole complex, or the limestone bedrock plate or soundboard. But they were there for some kind of effect. What that effect is, we can speculate.
I think it's a technological reason, though, Chris. I definitely feel that.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, they had a reason for it, and I think it was technology. I mean, they did break into one of the boxes, if I'm not right in saying. I think they broke into one of the boxes and they found nothing inside it.
Right. Exactly. That's what I mean, that is, you can't find anything in the literature that describes them removing one of those 25-ton lids and finding a bull on the inside. There was a wooden sarcophagus that they found a bull in, but these boxes there's no discussion anywhere about actually removing one of those lids.
Wow.
And they didn't remove them anyway. I mean, they're all except for those boxes that don't have lids, but all the lids are still on there. They appear, such as the one in the basalt box, the one with the scratches on it. They appear to have been pushed forward from the back, which would indicate that they maybe have used some kind of a hydraulic ram to push it forward, and using the back wall as a brace.
Wow. It even boggles me that, some are pink granite, some are black granite, and you got all these different beautiful colored variations as well. It's like, these guys they had a method to do this that was easy, Chris. They didn't do this because it was hard. They had some easy method for doing this. Otherwise,
Oh God, yeah. I mean, we do a lot of things today, as you know, in manufacturing, when, somebody who is not familiar with how things are made would look at it, they would be, they would admire it, but they would accept it because they know that technology exists today to do this. What blows people away about this is what we have been taught about the capabilities of the ancient Egyptians, and what you have is a huge disconnect between what we've been taught and what we're finding.
Sure. What a fascinating place is Serapeum, Chris. I do hope people, get there and get some more publicity than it has. I mean, like I say though, Chris, this very end box, the one with the crude writing, I just see two different minds at play, two different types of technology. It's like it's been recycled. It's like these boxes have been recycled from their original use.
Yes. Yeah. Could be. I mean, I think they were probably, it was probably decorated, to honor some ruler or dignitary or something like that. But it's definitely not crafted originally to house a bull.
For sure. Chris, that's all I wanted to say. We wanted to do just, I spoke to Stephen Mailer, your good friend, and I said I would do an update with yourself on the Serapeum now that I've been. But what's new for you, Chris? Can we talk about any recent projects you're working on?
Well, one of the things that I would like to do is, right now, my projects are family and
wow.
And settling down.
You've just recently moved. You've just recently moved, I hear.
Yeah. Recently moved, maybe moving again. Probably am moving again. So, there's my life this year has been in turmoil. So I've got to settle down on that. There is definitely, a few things that I want to do, and more books that I need to write. And so, how that flows, it's hard to say. I think as far as the Serapeum goes, future work at the Serapeum, I think we need to engage with Egyptian engineers and technical people in Egypt, architects, engineers, and use so that they can do a thorough study. And if I can facilitate that, that would be absolutely fantastic. But that's what I think the next move is to get the best evidence that the ancient Egyptians left, and have the Egyptians themselves recognize the technical superiority of the ancient Egyptians that built these.
For sure. Well, Chris, thank you for your update and for the time today. And I'm delighted to be talking to a returning guest today, Mr. Christopher Dunn. And we've got a little special featured show today on the Serapeum of ancient Egypt, this ancient underground complex full of mystery. If you're not familiar with Chris's previous shows, you can catch them on the archives. But Chris is the author of 2 books, The Giza Power Plant and Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, which we've both discussed on the show. And Chris doesn't need much of an introduction to Capricorn Radio, so without further ado, hi Chris, welcome back to Capricorn Radio.
Hello James, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, as you know, Chris, we've had a little chat when I came back from the chematology tour, and
just by photographs. Though the amount of evidence that seems to be mounting, adding up now, it seems to be that if something looks precise, it appears that, when you actually go back with the instruments, you're going to find that it is indeed, if it's in Egypt, it is indeed crafted very precisely. Well, in 1986, I didn't have any tools to make that determination.
Sure.
And so I made a mental note when I came back to the States that the next time that I traveled to Egypt, I would take some tools with me, and I would check the flatness and the surfaces to find out just exactly how precise they were. That opportunity didn't come to me again until 1995, and I was invited to participate in a documentary with Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock. And it was around February of 1995. So I packed my clothes in my suitcase, and I took a parallel, a ground precise straight edge parallel, which was about 2/10,000ths of an inch precision. And a square, a toolmaker's square. These are hardened steel tools, and the kind that you would use in a machine shop or a tool room, something like that.
Sure.
And so I took those with me, and also some forming wax, because I'd also noted that there were some objects that had a corner radius that also seemed to be consistent. So it was my thought that I would take an impression with some forming wax, and to see just exactly how consistent those radii were. And then in 1995, I got to Egypt. I met Graham and Robert, very nice people, and I was filmed in the King's Chamber the morning after I arrived at 9 a.m. And then after that,
I'm blown away by the Serapeum, Chris. I'm absolutely blown away by this place.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, we've waited many years for other people to start going in there and seeing what it contains. Because I've been like a lone voice out there for many years talking about it and discussing it. But it's great that other people are now getting to see it, and also take their own measurements.
When was the first time you seen the Serapeum, Chris?
It was in 1995, but I can tell you what happened and how I came to have the tools that I had in 1995. And the Serapeum actually was quite a surprise for me. But I first went to Egypt. It was as I was riding the Giza power plant. I first went to Egypt in 1986, and I wasn't expecting to see the extraordinary precision that we are now noting, crafted into the limestone and granite artifacts that we find now. And so I just went to take notes, observe, make observations, take notes, and confirm some of the concepts that I was working on in my book. But what I did note, as I was walking around the Giza Plateau at that time, was that the casing blocks for the pyramids seemed to be extraordinarily flat and they had very sharp corners. But of course, you know, as you know, as an engineer, and myself,
Chris.
something that looks to be precise may not necessarily be that precise.
To the eye, the eye can be deceiving, Chris, can't it?
Yes, they can. And so I never make a determination on any artifact, and I've had people send photographs to me over the years and ask my opinion whether it's machined and I can't really confirm one way or the other unless I take some measurements of it and do a thorough examination of the artifact. So I kind of decline to comment on many artifacts that are presented to